everybody, and welcome back to another episode in this series, which is now a series because I've done another one, which is going to be all about which taxa still need representation in Planet Zoo. So, as I say, second in a series, so if you haven't seen the first one, then please do check that out. That is which locations still need representation in Planet Zoo. So basically this is a little series on looking at an analysis of what species we have in Planet Zoo, and then just having a look at the different takes on what we might still need. So obviously in the first one looked at which locations do we not have any animals from. So in this episode we're going to look at which taxa still need representation. So a taxon, for anyone who doesn't know, is just a group of any rank of like a species, a family, a class, so any taxonomic group, so a group of organisms that are seen to be related in some way. That's not an overly scientific explanation. If you want to look at a proper one, you can look one up, but that's basically what it is. So we're basically looking at which groups of animals are not represented in Planet Zoo. So what we've got then for this video is we'll have a little look at what we do have. So we'll be focusing on birds, reptiles and mammals, not the other stuff because that's kind of not really relevant for habitat animals, because we're only going to look at habitat animals for now, like we did in the last video. So we will look at those in terms of which orders firstly are represented. So an order is one of the rankings there, underneath kind of reptiles, birds, mammals. That's the next one down. So we will look at that for everything, so what we've got and what we're missing, and then I will kind of show how many families are represented for each of those orders as well. And then after that we're going to have a look at the top 20 wish list requests by unrepresented orders, unrepresented families and unrepresented genus. So yeah, a little bit of analysis, a little bit of wish list stuff as well, like we did in the last episode. So we'll firstly do the what we have, in terms of orders of reptiles, mammals and birds, and then what we don't have. So a little disclaimer then, the lists of taxa that I've taken and used I've got from Wikipedia. I've not gone super in depth, hopefully it's mostly right. If you have any problems, obviously taxonomy is always sort of changing and shifting, so there might be some things in there you don't quite agree with, but hopefully it's pretty much correct. So I've omitted what I've sort of labelled as unviable orders, so things like I can't even think now. So bats, for example, for mammals, I didn't include bats. Obviously, they're in the habitat boxes. Sorry, the exhibit boxes, the walkthroughs. But yeah, any order that I don't think would be able to be a habitat species in Planet Zoo, I have ignored for now. So I've only called them viable orders. So they're things that I think we could have at least one species from that order that could be a habitat animal in Planet Zoo. So yeah, I've omitted any what I call unviable orders, but when I list the families that are represented from the order, I have just taken everything because it was too hard to filter through all of them. So you might see some where there's a lot of families that aren't represented, but really only one or two might be able to. So the first one we'll go into, because it's very nice and easy, is reptiles. So reptilia. Also, I will try not to pronounce too many scientific names because it's going to get messy, but I will do a few, and don't get annoyed if I pronounce them wrong. So reptilia. So we have 10 species in Planet Zoo from the class Reptilia. We have got 3 out of 3 viable orders represented. So there are actually only 3 from what I can see. But again, if you have any issues with that, then let me know. But yeah, so we have Crocodilia, Squamata and Testudinata. So the crocodilians, lizards and snakes and tortoises. So crocodilians, we've got 3 out of 3 families represented, which is pretty good going. For the lizards and snakes, we've got 1 out of 67 as habitat species. So obviously all of the monitor lizards and the Komodo dragons are actually in the same family, so we only have 1 out of 67, but this is an example of where most of the other ones aren't actually viable. Only things like iguanas and other things like that you might be able to say would be viable, but yeah, I haven't gone too in depth with that. And then with the tortoises and other things, we have 1 out of 14 families represented as a habitat species again, because we do have the terrapin. So reptilia, nice and easy. We don't actually have to go through anything else. We've got pretty much everything we need. I know there's a lot of people who would like more crocodiles, who might want other tortoises and things like that, but in terms of representation, all the orders are represented. We have a relatively good representation there compared to mammals and definitely birds. So we're going to do it in order of best to worst representation. So we'll now move on to mammals. So mammals, the biggest group in Planet Zoo. So we have 108 species in Planet Zoo, mammalian species in habitats. And from what I could work out, we have 12 out of 17 viable orders represented. So we'll go through pretty quickly. So we've got the carnivores, 40 carnivores, very large amount of carnivores, 13 out of 16 represented. I probably won't actually read through all of these, but if you want to go through the stats at the bottom, maybe you could just pause the video, because it's going to take ages for me to just read everything, and it's probably a bit boring. So if you want to know more, read through that, but I'll just go through the basic stuff up the top here. So even-toed ungulates and cetaceans apparently put in there a new group with a new name. I don't really like it, but that's what it said on IUCN, which I tend to use just as a base for things. So 32 of them. We've got 1 armadillo. We've got 4 marsupials, sort of, well, a certain type of marsupial, kangaroos and koalas and things like that. We have 1 monotreme. We have 8 odd-toed ungulates, 1 pangolin, 1 anteater, 13 primates, 2 elephants, 4 rodents, and then the aardvark. So yeah, not too bad. The only thing I'll point out family-wise would be, for me, is the primates is the one that stands out. So obviously you can see there we only have 5 out of 16 families represented in primates, so that is definitely something that's lacking. Rodents as well sticks out, but obviously a lot of those families are tiny little things that wouldn't work, so I think we're doing pretty well actually with rodent representation. So if we look at those other 5 then that we are missing in this next slide, so we have Dasyuromorphia, so the Tasmanian devil quolls, things like that. We've got the opossums, so the Virginia opossum there. We've got hyraxes, rock hyrax in that picture there. We've got lagomorphs, so rabbits and hares and things like that. And then we've got the bandicoots, so in that picture is the greater bilby. So yeah, we're not too bad. Obviously only 5 species not represented. Definitely would be nice and fairly easy to add some of them in. Tasmanian devil, as we know, very high on the wish list. Opossum, I'm kind of surprised they didn't do it in a way it definitely fit the Twilight kind of vibes, but I guess they had other things to put in. And yeah, the others would be nice additions too. Not too many animals to add in, and then we'd pretty much, as you can see, have everything represented. Also, when you look at them, there's not many families there in those that need representing, so even just 1 species from all of them would be pretty much sorted for mammals in terms of the diversity of orders that are represented. So the big one we'll go into next is the birds. So we only have 8 species in Planet Zoo so far. You can see from this list we have a large number missing, so we only have 6 out of 21 viable orders represented from my point of view. Again, disclaimer, these are just things that I think would work for Planet Zoo. So we have cassowaries and emus, we have 2 of them. Galliforms, the game birds, 1 of them. We have a crane, we have a flamingo, we have 2 penguins, and we have an ostrich. So yeah, but almost no birds, and I know we keep saying aviaries, we need birds, we need flying, all of that. Even if we didn't do flying birds, these are the ones I think we could get away with having as non-flying birds in Planet Zoo in the next image here. So we've got quite a lot here to go through. So we've got the eagles, hawks, vultures, etc. For that we've got the secretary bird is an option there. We've got all the waterfowl, so swans, ducks, geese. There's definitely options in there. We've got the kiwis, we've got hornbills and hoopos. For this one, the main one really would be the southern ground hornbill. We've got sarimas, we've got the gulls, stilts, sandpipers, all of those sorts of things. Most of them I don't think are viable, but something like a stilt, when I've seen them in zoos and worked with them, they've mostly been on the floor a lot of the time. They do stick to the ground quite a lot, so I think you could get away with it. Again, these are just my opinions on what I think might work, so yeah, if you have different opinions, please let me know in the comments, or have any other suggestions of species that would work in place of what I've suggested, then let me know in the comments as well. We've got the storks, of course, similar to the cranes, so very easy to put something in there. We've got the marabou stork in the picture. Pigeons and doves, again, one of those where most of them wouldn't really work, but something like Victoria crown pigeon in the picture there I think would work. Again, anytime I've seen them, they've spent a lot of time on the ground, so I think you could get away with them not flying around in Planet Zoo if they were to be added. We've then got Sumbertons and Kagoo, don't know how you pronounce it, but that would be a nice representation for that part of the world it's from, the kind of South Pacific Oceania sort of islands around there, New Caledonia I think it was, so a cool little ground bird that's funky looking, interesting little behaviours and things too. We've got the bustards, so quite a few species there, fairly large, more ground-based birds. We've got pelicans, ibis herons, that family, pelicaniforms. So for that one I have put in the shoebill, I think is what we had in there, yes, shoebill. Then we have got the parrots and things like that, so again most wouldn't work, but I've gone for the kakapo. Again, fairly ground, well, almost completely sort of ground dwelling, so that should work fine. This was one I was a bit unsure about, but I've put it in anyway, so let me know if you know much about them. But sand grouse is its own order, so it looks like it could be a potential. Again, I'm not too sure, but I've chucked it in anyway. So that one is the pin-tailed sand grouse. We've got the rheas, so greater rhea, obviously very easy. The main one really that we're missing for the ratites, the large ratites, and then the tinamouforms, so tinamous. We've got the elegant crested tinamou there, again relatively ground dwelling species. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of options there. Some of them are fairly strict, as I say, there's not many options, but then there's others like the storks, there's quite a few species you could have in there to represent that order. The waterfowl as well. So yeah, some food for thought there, and just really sort of emphasises how few birds we have when actually we could have a decent variety. If we had all of these species in game, obviously we'd still be missing the parrots and like the proper parrots and toucans and eagles and owls and all sorts of other things, but I think it's kind of a good representation there of at least ground dwelling birds. So next we will move on to the next sort of section. So with this we've got the top 20 suggestions from the Meta Wishlist on the Planet Zoo forums, but what I've done is I've filtered them out based on a number of things. So we've got 3 different versions. So in the first one we'll look at the unrepresented orders. In the second one we will look at the unrepresented families, and in the third one we'll look at unrepresented genera. So obviously we're kind of getting from start off really wide spreading, so anything that's already in game, any order that's already in the game, we ignore that one. We only list things that aren't represented at all by their order. And then we'll go on to families and go on to genera, and you'll kind of see certain things shift down the list. What I have done is I have put a list at the bottom, of course, of what they will be representing if they were in the game. And then around every picture we have got a little coloured box. So the boxes basically represent a kind of measure between how popular the animal is, but also how well it would do at representing unrepresented taxa in the game. So if it's got a gold box around it, that means it appears on the order, the family and the genus page. If it's got a silver box, it's only appearing on 2, and if it's got a bronze box around it, it's only appearing on 1 of the pages. So something that's gold is a very popular species because it's managed to make it on all 3, but only can make it to all 3 because it actually would be good at representing a new order, a new family and a new genus, as well as obviously being popular enough to make it high on the wish list. Hopefully this will all make sense once we actually get into it. This first one is top 20 Meta Wishlist suggestions by unrepresented orders. So, as I say, these are things that their order is not represented at all. With this, I haven't filtered out anything that I have sort of deemed unviable, so there's a few random things in here. So, we've got the Tasmanian Devil, number 1 spot, Secretary Bird, number 2, North Island Brown Kiwi. I think all of them are great choices, definitely. We've got the Manatee, so I did suggest that in the last video. Again, it's very highly requested, of course, but it is not very viable in terms of it's fully aquatic, so it's definitely highly requested, but I just don't know if we'll ever get it. Next we've got the Shoebill. Again, as I say, easy, good species, charismatic, funky looking. I think it would be a good addition to the game, and it would be representing a new order as well. So those are the ones that would be representing all 3. They're top in all the top 20s, so they would represent all of their the various taxa. Next we've got the Greater Rhea, the Mute Swan, the Marabou Stork and the Southern Ground Hornbill. So Rhea, I think, yeah, it makes sense to have it. Again, if we're very limited on what we can have, then it's still maybe I would be happy to leave that one out for something a bit more different, but it is still representing something we've not got from the order. Then we have got the Swan, again, good addition. I like it. Waterfowl we need, so I'd be happy with the Swan. Marabou Stork, definitely agree. It would be a great addition, and Southern Ground Hornbill too. I think would be a nice addition. Something quite funky looking, nice sort of shape. Can mix it with some other African animals. So yeah, it'd be a cool addition, I think. And then these ones we won't be seeing, if I remember exactly right how I've done everything, we won't be seeing again. They're only in the top 20 if we are looking at the unrepresented orders. So we've got the Rock Hyrax, we've got the Chinese Giant Salamander, which I did look at including in some other stuff, but from what I saw it's fully aquatic. I thought it might spend some time on that, but I'm not an expert, so my limited amount of research showed me that, so I ignored it. But obviously it's on the wish list, so I'm not discounting anything on the wish list. We've got the Atlantic Puffin, again, for my suggestion to represent that order, I had the Stilt. I thought that might be a bit more viable. I know puffins are kind of, they do sort of spend a lot of time on the ground when they're around nesting and stuff, but I felt it maybe not as viable, the puffin. Still a lovely species to have, but I don't know, I feel like it would need to be in a proper aviary flying about from place to place, not as just sort of walking around the floor. But let me know what you think. would include to represent the Charadriiforms, if I'm saying it right. Next we've got the Kakapo, as we've said, good little species, good representation for the area where it comes from as well. European hare is a bit of an interesting one. I mean, I feel like the most lagomorph species you see is just normal rabbits, but yeah, European hare, fair enough. Don't really see it that often in zoos. I don't know how many would have them, but that is number 14 on the wish list, just by unrepresented orders. We've got the burrowing owl. I did debate including the owls on my thing, but I decided against it. But yeah, if we were going to have an owl species, then I was thinking the burrowing owl, so I would be happy to see them included in the game. We've got the greater bilby, which is a nice one. Victoria crown pigeon, I think, would be a great addition. Put it in some tropical houses and things like that. That would be really nice to have walking around in those. The coconut crab, bit of an outlandish one. There's a couple of strange ones at the end here, but it's obviously fairly popular. So yeah, the coconut crab, terrifying to be honest, but quite cool. The greater roadrunner, I again wasn't too sure about including that order, but the roadrunner was the one I was thinking of if I did include it. So yeah, I'd be happy to have a roadrunner. And then the cow-nose ray. Again, I don't think it's viable, fully aquatic. Be a cool species to have, of course, but at this stage it does seem unlikely that we're going to get full aquatics, but it is number 20 if we only look at the orders that we haven't got. So that is the top 20, just filtering out unrepresented orders. So we'll move on now to unrepresented families. So you will obviously be able to see some similar ones in here. So we've got Tasmanian devil and secretary bird again at the top, but then there's been some shifting further down. So if we're just looking at the families that aren't represented, the walrus comes in at number 3. I've said before, I think it would be a good addition, so I won't go too much into detail. And the black howler monkey again, desperately need more primates, as we've seen. So any extra primate representation I think would be great. The kiwi we have again, but in number 5 this time. Then the golden lion tamarin, definitely again we need. I feel like callitrichids is something we're really lacking. They're so common in so many places, even in the small zoos. Normally have some little marmosets and things like that. So yeah, any sort of callitrichid would be a good addition from my point of view. The manatee goes down to number 7 and the shiba down to number 8. And then we get the echidna come back in. So echidna, I said before, great little species, nice to round out the monotremes representation. So I'd be happy with that one. We've got the great white pelican, definitely would be happy with a pelican, as I said before in the last video. We've got the cockerel sifaka, nice species, more lemur representation. And another one you'll see in a couple of spaces next to this one. But yeah, the cockerel sifaka would be a good addition. Rhea goes down to number 12. Then we've got the ii, so definitely a nice funky species. Put in the nocturnal houses or things like that, that'd be quite cool. The alligator snapping turtle pops in. I think it's the only reptile edition that we have in the whole thing, but I can't actually remember now. I'll see it in the next slide. But yeah, the alligator snapping turtle would be a nice species for some extra reptilian representation, I think. We've got the collared peccary. A lot of people have spoken about that from what I've seen, so I think that would be a cool one to include. Mutes one we have again, but further down, number 16, and the Marbury number 17. We've got the scarlet ibis comes in. I definitely have a soft spot for ibis, as you will have seen if you've used any of my mods. So I'd definitely be happy to have some ibis in the game. And as I said in the last video, I think they could get away with them being on the ground, walking around, not flying too much. It's a price I'm willing to pay if they could do them well and animate them nicely, and maybe put a bit more thought into how they make them work and have a bit of extra flying behaviours or things in them, or some enrichment items that they could just use to fly up onto or something. That would be quite cool. We've got the helmeted guinea fowl, a nice little galliform I think it is, but representing its own family there. So that's quite a common species you see on a lot of African savanna enclosures, so I think that would be a nice one to have in, because it has a nice like call and everything that sort of sounds like a zoo when you hear guinea fowl mooching about. And then last on the list, this one, the southern ground hornbill. As I said before, good addition. So last but not least, we then go down to unrepresented genera. So most of the species we've seen already now are gone, bar just a few. So if we only look at the unrepresented genera in the wish list, then this is the top 20 we would get. So we have the Tasmanian devil and secretary birds, so all the way through they've been number 1 and 2. So if we don't get them, it will be a travesty at some point in the game's history. The wolverine makes an appearance to represent Gulo, when previously we were looking at mustelids and carnivores for the order and the family and the order. Goodness me, it gets very confusing when talking taxonomy and using all these different words. But yeah, I said in the last video, I think it would be nice to get the wolverine. It's a good solid species to have. Funky look thing, good representation for the northern hemisphere. So wolverine would be nice. South American coati definitely would be a great addition for the South American areas in your zoos. The walrus comes in again, number 5 this time. Then we get the Goodfellow's tree kangaroo popping back in. So we discussed it on the last video about representing some more of the Oceania region, just some extra representation from down there, so I think that would be a good one to have in. We've got the black howler monkey again down in number 7. Then we have got the muskox comes in, as we said last video, again good representation for kind of Arctic areas of your zoos, so that would be a nice species to have. Hamadryas baboon, definitely would like some more representation of primates, but it only pops up in genera because it is the old world primates sort of grouping higher than that, so it doesn't appear on the other tables I made, or the other lists, sorry, that I made. We get the kiwi come in again, and then the tarkin makes an appearance for genera. So I had it on popping up on the list last time, so I think tarkin is a nice species to have in for Asian areas. We've got the golden line tamarin again, 100% we need it. The manatee, like I said, still up there, comes in all three lists that I made, but don't really think it's realistic. Sheeple again, number 14 this time. Grey crown crane we have come in. A nice species to have, looks different. African crane versus the Asian crane we've already got, so I'd be happy with that one. We've got the ocelot. This is one of the few that I'm not too keen on, just because small cap wise I think we're doing okay, but I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be overly disappointed if we got it, but we also know that we've got the most representation out of anything is carnivorous mammals in the group, in the game, sorry. So to have another one is still not ideal for me, but we'll take it. A lot of people want it, that's why it's in the top 20. We've got the Sega next. Definitely a cool, funky looking animal, so I'd be happy with that for some Asian representation for hoofstock. We've got the spectacled bear in. again, bear-wise, I'm not overly fussed on getting more bears, but if we had all the bears, then it's not the end of the world for me. Serval, same feelings as the ocelot for me, but I know a lot of people would like the serval, so that I can see maybe being added potentially in the future, you never know. And then lastly, the honey badger, definitely a funky little species that a lot of people are aware of, a lot of people would like. Has that nostalgic Zoo Tycoon thing that we talked about in the last video too, so yeah, I think honey badger wouldn't be a bad addition. But yeah, if we look at the number of all the orders, the orders that we already have, and we have so many carnivores, then it's kind of a shame to get that many more. But yeah, I mean, they're so diverse, that's why we have so many hoof-sucking carnivores. They're diverse, they're in a lot of areas, they have a lot of representation in zoos as well, so you can understand why we have got a sort of skew towards more of them than other things. But yeah, hopefully this has given you a bit of an idea of what we're missing from the game. So you might have different feelings on what you think is missing, what you would include from those different orders or things like that. If you disagree with something that I say is not viable, then feel free to let me know in the comments. If you have a preference for something else rather than what I've suggested in a certain order from the first part, then let me know. Let me know also with these last three, so the wish list, sorted by unrepresented order, family and genus. Are there any you'd swap out desperately for something else? Are any of these your suggestions that you've put in to the wish list? How does this sort of match up to the things that you've requested? Because it'd be interesting to know. Obviously these things are all top for a reason, so there must be a lot of people out there who have voted for them. But yeah, it's from my opinion interesting just to go through all this sort of data and look at what we've got, look at what I think we're missing and what people are requesting, and see how it matches up to then what we might end up getting in the future. I can't imagine they're ever going to do a kind of taxonomy based DLC or anything, but it's not out of the realms of possibility, I suppose. Something like birds, we might still get birds, you never know. It's definitely looking less and less likely, but we've obviously proved in that first slide where I said what orders aren't represented that even if we didn't get flying birds, proper aviaries, things like that, there are 21 species, well, more than 21, but there are lots of orders that aren't represented that could be, with exactly how the game is working currently, all these species. So I definitely think we need more birds, and I do hope we get them at some point, even if they just chuck a secretary bird in there and a marabou stork and a Victoria crown pigeon for some tropical houses. Like that would be quite nice. Just some extra token things, maybe a kiwi for good measure. But yeah, the other one that does stick out, of course, like I said before, is primates. So in our top wish list things that I've popped up, we've got obviously nothing in the order, but then in the families we've got the black howler, golden iron tamarin, the cockerel safaka, the ii, the hamadryas baboon. That looks like it's it. So yeah, I mean, if we had a primate pack, that would be great. I'm an advocate for a primate pack. I think there's a lot of variation in primates that we're missing. So a primate pack I'd be quite happy with. I'd definitely buy that one. I'd definitely buy a bird one. if they brought out a carnivore pack, would you buy it? If they brought out an ungulate pack, would you buy it? Interesting, just some interesting questions. So yeah, have a think on all your thoughts on all this sort of stuff. Let me know what you thought of the video. If you liked this video, this analysis, this kind of style of what I'm doing in these videos, then please let me know. I've definitely got some positive feedback in the last video, which is really nice to hear, so thanks everyone for that. And hopefully, yeah, we'll get a couple more of these type videos out. And as I said, I've got a couple more ideas of things that we can look at, different takes on what we might be missing from the game, and then obviously comparing it to what the wish list is suggesting too. So yeah, that is everything I have to speak about today. So if you do like the video, please leave a like, leave a comment with all your thoughts, as I said, or your wish list sort of stuff. Please do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and go back and check out the previous video too. But that is everything I have for today, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.